What's going on, guys? Jacob Billingsley, Build the Base podcast, episode 2, since the name change, since we've been back. Today, we're going to talk about the founding story of Base, how it started, why it started, and I'll just get right into it. I was playing minor league baseball with the Houston Astros. At the time, you did not get compensated very well at all. In the off seasons, I was doing a lot of pitching instruction, built up to about 20 to 30 guys, pretty much between middle school and college aged athletes. During the winter, I would have a few college guys that were local that would come work with me. Pretty much had middle school and high school guys the whole time throughout the off season at that point. I'm doing a lot of pitching instruction just to try to make money. That way I can survive in season financially. I started building up a pretty good clientele. I think at one point I ended up getting up to like 40 lessons per week. Maybe my second off season, I built up to something around that line. At the time, I was also training myself because there was nowhere to go train. There was no performance center. There was no strength and conditioning coach at any of the local schools. There was just nowhere that could help me with my direction and career as a professional athlete. So I went and started studying for the certification that is called the CSCS, the Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialty Exam. And that is an exam that all strength and conditioning coaches, in order to be a strength and conditioning coach at a Division I school, at a professional you have to have the CSCS exam, and you have to have a 4-year degree in order to get that. So it's not just like a weekend certification that you just like study a couple modules and take a test on and you get certified. This was like a several month process of me studying and learning, but I had zero intention of coaching. The reason that I was doing the certification was because I wanted to learn what I needed to know in order to train myself, because there was nowhere to go. There was no place, there was no performance center, and all I had was like online programming from my minor league strength coach, which was good programming. But again, like, if I wanted to get more detailed things, the only way for me to get it was to learn it myself. So that was the reason that I did a 4-month process of studying for the CSCS exam, was because I just wanted to know the knowledge so that I could train myself. Again, I had zero intention of strength coaching. I had zero intent of becoming a strength and conditioning coach, none at all of opening a strength and conditioning facility, especially a multi-location strength and conditioning facility. Had zero interest in doing that, never even crossed my mind. The entire reason that I did that was because I wanted to know the knowledge in order to train myself, because I could not get it elsewhere locally. So I went and did it. I passed it. I studied for 4 months, but again, it wasn't about passing the exam for me. But it was about getting the knowledge of what that was going to teach me. So I began to train myself. And like I mentioned, at the time, I had about 40 guys that were doing pitching instruction with me. So I passed the exam, honestly, about halfway through my last off season in 2019, and began training myself. Was still doing pitching instruction with the guys, go to spring training. I believe we got there like March 3rd, 2020. So I fly down to South Florida. I'm in the best shape of my life at that point. So I get to spring training, throw my first bullpen, best I've ever felt, best velocity, best pitch shapes. I'm in a really good spot pitching wise. And obviously we all know what happened just a few days later. So I think it was like March 7th, maybe. We get sent back home from spring training, have no idea how long we're going to be home. Of course, just like anyone, we didn't know if it was going to be a couple of days, couple of weeks. Obviously, after a couple of weeks, we realized that this might be a several month thing. So when I got back home, obviously I reached back out to the guys that I was doing pitching instruction with and began running pitching instruction again. But the higher level high school guys and then the college guys, I actually began doing pitching instruction and strength and conditioning program following their pitching lesson or throwing program for the day. So that was when I began doing strength and pitching. And again, the reason I was doing that was because I needed to make a living. I needed to make money in order to live on in season of the minor leagues. So that's the long story short of how I began doing strength and conditioning and coaching strength and conditioning. Because again, I had no interest in doing that. I had no intent to do that. It was just something that was like I was servicing these guys from a pitching and throwing development standpoint. And I had now accrued accrue the knowledge of strength and conditioning. And now a couple of these guys were asking, like, hey, my high school gym is closed. Can I train with you? Or my college gym is obviously closed because we just got sent home too. Can we do strength and conditioning as well? So I began doing that with a handful of guys and did that the rest of March, April, and all of May. And then late May, I actually got during the middle of a coaching session. It was May 28th of 2020. I had an Apple Watch at the time and I pulled it up and I said Houston, Texas number that's on my watch. And it had already been going around on social media online that, there's probably not going to be a minor league season. And a lot of these organizations are starting to release some of their minor league players because they don't want to carry the payroll costs, which keep in mind, we weren't getting paid. We only got paid once the season began. Obviously, there was a bunch of things going on. They were trying to figure out, was there going to be a season? Are they going to, have to pay the guys? Are they not going to have to pay the guys? So they were trying to determine all that. And that was when a lot of the teams was cutting a lot of teams, cutting a lot of players. So in the middle of one of the training sessions, a Houston, Texas number popped up on my Apple Watch. Immediately, I knew exactly what it was, that I was getting released of my contract with the Houston Astros because I had never gotten a Houston call before, except for, when I was getting drafted. And I just knew what it was just because that was like happening a lot at the time. So get released of my contract. And I think it was 4 days later, I had an LLC created that was a Billingsley Sports Performance. And I just continued to do what I was doing. I was doing pitching instruction. I was doing strength and conditioning, and I just began to ramp it up. I began to study a little bit more, watch some strength and conditioning coaches, YouTubes, and doing some online courses, just trying to learn more about strength and conditioning. And keep in mind, I had the certification that you needed. I just wanted to get the knowledge to then begin helping these guys as much as possible with that knowledge. So I did that June, July, and August. And I get pretty much like early part of August and things are going really well. I'm in month 2 or 3 of being home straight, only focusing on training these guys. My client base began to grow. Obviously, financially was the best I'd ever done, especially being in the minor leagues. And things were going well. But I got to the beginning of August and realized, okay, if this is what I'm going to actually do, I want to do this to the best of my abilities, the best that I possibly can. And strength and conditioning coaches typically do an internship in college. So before they can graduate in exercise science or whatever related field, they have to do a strength and conditioning internship. Well, I didn't know that I was going to do that. So I didn't do an internship. So I actually stopped the business completely. So after 3 months of ramping up, things are going very well. We're on the up and up. I decided to take an unpaid internship under a strength and conditioning coach that coached a lot of the same type of athletes that I wanted to train. And I go from playing professional baseball, starting my company was growing, stopping the company to then take an unpaid internship just because I wanted to accrue more knowledge to be able to provide a better service. So that's what I did. The next 4+ months, I took an unpaid internship. I moved to Florida. It was all out of pocket. I paid for all my living, my rent, food, day-to-day living expense, all of it for an unpaid internship because I wanted to understand and learn the knowledge that it was going to take to do this at a high level long term. And once I came back, which was about the end of December of 2020, I got back and of course I'm getting ready to start things back up. And I decided to make a name change from Billingsley Sports Performance. We changed it to Base Sports Performance. And the reason for that name change was I wanted it to be more of a company. I wanted it to be more of a brand. And Billingsley was going to be all about me. And that was not the point. That wasn't what I was trying to do. I was trying to help build these athletes up and give them that direction that I needed just a few months ago. And that I even took the time to go learn this information and pay and study to do the certification that the highest strength and conditioning coaches in the world take this strength and conditioning certification. I want to do that to get the knowledge to then train myself. So at that point, I decided to make the name change because I didn't want it to be about Billingsley. I wanted just a brand. I wanted to be able to create a company that helped provide direction to athletes. And I played around for a few months with trying to figure out what was the name going to be changed to? What did I want it to be? I knew a couple of things that I wanted. I want it to be brandable. I want it to be able to, you hear it, you're like, yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. And the example I use is like, Tiger, LeBron, you know who those are immediately just by one name. I want it to be like that. I wanted something that was going to be a one very snappy where people understood and it was a brand immediately. And I had a logo that I really liked with Billingsley Sports Performance, specifically the B. The B I'd like hand drawn. I had like an idea in my head of like how I wanted the logo to be drawn. And I just kept the B. So I knew that I wanted the new name to have that B in the name. And I went through a bunch of stuff. I honestly, I still have the notes on my phone. I could probably go back and look at like all the different options. But I ended up after a couple of months, I finally came on the short, quick name base. And to me, immediately it was like, yep, that's it. It was short, it was quick, it was brandable, and it had my B to where I could still use the same logo. And that's how Base Sports Performance started. When I came back from the unpaid internship, I rebranded as Base Sports Performance, had a new logo, had, some gear. I had, some hats, I had some short sleeve hoodies, some t-shirts, and just hit the ground running and moved into a new location in Hernando, Mississippi. And that is how Base Sports Performance started. Since then, I had to figure out the business model. I had to figure out that this was a business and had to begin to create something that was going to stay in business and be sustainable and also to be able to help people build their careers. So that's the long story short of how Base Sports Performance was founded. Until I talk to you guys in the next podcast, have a great day.